And as a leader, I think what was interesting is my team really managed all of COVID. So we took every COVID ticket. First quarter of this year, even we answered 3,000 COVID tickets around wellness and connectivity and illness. And I realized very quickly as a leader that, especially in HR, we lean in, we do our job, and we're there for the employees and the experience. And sometimes we forget to have our own experience. And so as a leader, I really had to pull back and make sure that my team's wellness was really in my hands. And how did I help them understand that, while we're there to take care of everyone else, we definitely needed to take care of ourselves.
I think my perspective has shifted dramatically. We're all in a situation where we can't always create exceptional boundaries, but I'm actually not going to apologize for it, because this is where we are. And if as a company, we're going to continue to foster remote work, which we are, and flex and all the things that we've decided to do, then we can't create a situation where we make moms apologize for lifing happening right next to them.
I don't know if it for you guys, but I found myself being much more intentional about being explicit with my young women, even that don't have kids yet, because I find my reactions and choice of words is really important. So if somebody said like, oh, you're the hero, you've got so many kids. And I started saying, it's the crazy I choose. It's my choice. Those choices are my blessings. And I think that it's important that we don't walk around tired and exhausted and like martyrs of our own decisions, because we chose these things. This is so awesome that we have all these opportunities and people in our lives that want to love us well.
Welcome to the People First Community Podcast, where I talk with business leaders, authors, and HR disruptors on how to build amazing company cultures centered around purpose, people first mindset, and love for one another. The podcast is part of the People First Community Platform, a grassroots community of conscious leaders and HR rebels who wants to build a better workplace together. To learn more, visit www.people-first.community. This month, our guests are Robyn Jordan, Senior Managing Director of Employee Experience at DriveTime, Stacie Mallen, Vice President, Human Resources Centers of Excellence at Universal Technical Institute, and Tiffany Sauder, President and CEO at Element3. Our topic is Momming in 2021 and Beyond, epic lessons learned from the trenches of moms who are leading culture change. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the People First Community Podcast. I'm super excited for our three guests this month. Robyn Jordan, Stacie Mallen, and Tiffany Sauder. Those are just amazing ladies that I've had the privilege to know for quite some time. They don't know each other, so we'll just make some connections between the three of them. So Tiffany lives in around Indianapolis in Indiana. Stacie and Tiffany are connected somehow because Stacie grew up in Indiana, but moved to Phoenix several years ago. And now she's in Phoenix, and Robyn actually lives in the Phoenix area as well. So that's the connection beyond being a mom and being a leader as well. So welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So what are you drinking? I'm going to ask the question first.
I just finished my coffee, which is late. It's almost noon, but
I'm in
Earl Grey tea.
Yeah, what do you have?
Earl Grey.
Yeah, I'm Tazo, the mint tea. So afternoon, I try not to do caffeine so I can sleep.
That's great. So we have a lot of things to discuss today, but I'm really curious to hear from you. Over the past 14 months, what have you learned about yourself as a mom and as a leader? Who wants to go first?
I'll
chime
first.
in.
Yeah, go ahead, Robyn.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Robyn.
So I think for me, I'm not sure about the other ladies. My kids went back to school pretty quick after summer with the pandemic. And I think as I was balancing being the COVID epicenter of our organization, as well as sitting on the school board to advocate for our children, what I learned about myself is that it's a really interesting dilemma personally when you want your kids to be in school and having an in-person education and not, getting behind emotionally or socially, while making a decision at work to send everybody home and go virtual. And so I was in this really interesting spot that was very conflicting for me as first a mom, a person, and a leader. I had this weird dynamic of all ends of the spectrum during the pandemic. And what I learned is if your gut is telling you it is right, follow it and just do the right thing. And remember that the population is different, the people have different feelings. And listen, I think as a mom, I became a really good listener to my kids, and they wanted to go to school. And even though fundamentally I may have felt differently, I had to lean into what they wanted. And then at work, I heard people say, we're nervous and we want to be home, and really just listening to that and doing the right thing for that population. And then I was in the office the whole time. So I sort of split the middle of trying to balance where everything was. And as a leader, I think what was interesting is my team really managed all of COVID. So we took every COVID ticket. First quarter of this year, even we answered 3,000 COVID tickets around wellness and connectivity and illness. And I realized very quickly as a leader that, especially in HR, we lean in, we do our job, and we're there for the employees and the experience. And sometimes we forget to have our own experience. And so as a leader, I really had to pull back and make sure that my team's wellness was really in my hands. And how did I help them understand that, while we're there to take care of everyone else, we definitely needed to take care of ourselves. So it was a pretty interesting journey for me personally and professionally over the last 14 months.
And I've got to apologize because I was so excited to jump into the conversation that I actually forgot asking you to introduce yourselves. So please go ahead, Robyn.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Robyn Jordan. I live here in Phoenix, as you mentioned, and I am the head of HR for the DriveTime family of companies here in the Valley.
Stacie?
Yeah, so I'm Stacie Mallen, and I am I'm the VP of Centers of Excellence for HR for Universal Technical Institute. And so that means, I'll just say it, like I get all the good stuff, all the growth stuff, and we don't do the employee relations. The HR VPs are the other side of the house. So I have a team of amazing humans that we work together on total rewards, diversity, equity, inclusion, talent acquisition, data, and analytics.
Tiffany?
And yeah, I'm Tiffany Sauder. I'm the president and CEO of Element3. We're a marketing strategy and brand firm in Indianapolis. And I'm excited to get to know you ladies. And Spencer, thanks for making the connections here.
So since you have the mic on, Tiffany, sorry. So what have you learned over the past 14 months about yourself as a mom and as a leader?
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit of context because I think it's relevant to the lessons learned. So I was a young leader in 2008, 2009, still at Element3, but very young. And I feel like I made every mistake in the book that time around when it came to leading through crisis. And so I felt like this time was really a redemption tour for me as a leader and making sense of it. And because God has a great sense of humor, I had a baby in the 08-09 one, our first daughter, and I had a baby in this one. This one was less planned than the first one. And so I just feel like whenever I'm going through crisis, for some reason, my life gets shoved totally into chaos. And I think this time around, what I learned is that I can have confidence in uncertainty. And for me, that has been a real evolution as a leader, that confidence doesn't actually come from knowing the answer. It comes from, for me, knowing that I made the best decision with the information we have available and being able to step completely into it. And the first time around when I was leading, I really was just so stuck in indecision that we just were a victim of our environment because we didn't do anything offensively. And this time around, you still don't have the advantage. None of us did, of knowing how long this is going to last. What's the real impact going to be? Which of my clients are going to be impacted? Who's going to get sick? Is this thing going to kill us? Like, you had no idea. And the first time I just sort of kept teetering, like wobbling around, waiting for certainty, which we don't have the advantage of that as leaders. And so being able to have confidence in the uncertainty, knowing this is the decision we're making with the information we have, and we just have to keep iterating from there. And I think we felt it in all different, I felt it certainly at work. I have, my oldest is in middle school. And so, they're an uncertain package, even in certain times. And so I was helping her with that. And then my own body, if you're a woman, you've had a baby, it's like you have no control, and not knowing how COVID was going to impact babies and women who are pregnant. Like, there was I couldn't find a plumb line anywhere in life. And yet I still feel like I was able to find some semblance of confidence through that. And that was a really different juxtaposition of experience compared to a decade ago. So I don't know, I felt more refined. It was ugly. I mean, I was sweaty and flailing around for sure, but we got here. So.
What about you, Stacie?
Yeah, I guess everything shifted for me just prior to COVID. I actually, we finished, I finalized a divorce that was going on for a long time, moved, like our whole life went like this. And then we got to experience COVID all at the same time. So that was fun and interesting and entertaining. And a couple of things that I learned, more on the backside of this. One, about myself. I have a podcast. Blake and I launched our podcast really because of COVID. Both of us were looking for new roles and opportunities, and we wanted to create that rhythm of regularity and accountability to one another. And it's ended up being such an incredibly beautiful thing. So I think that was the lesson for me is, you can create your own foundation in those times of uncertainty. And some of it is creating ritual and rhythm and habit and accountability. Those are some big lessons for me as a mom. Finalizing, everything, that was going on forever. So I was actually already dating my now fiance, and coming together at this moment in time as 5 kids and kind of the Brady Bunch that we are. One thing that I learned as a mom is that, sometimes people that are struggling, kids that are struggling, teenagers that are struggling, it's not the most obvious thing. And I'll just share my youngest daughter, she's second to youngest in our crew, was struggling more dramatically than I ever thought was possible. This was my straight A national level volleyball. Like she was the kid that I never worried about. She started failing all of her classes as a freshman in high school. She just slipped really deep into a really dark and hard place. And what I did was I started researching. That's always my control mechanism, right? I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to research this, how to get her help. And what I learned as a parent in that process was right now, self-harm in teenagers is north of 300% an increase. We have an epidemic on our hands of teenagers, and I have a house full of teenagers. So what I learned is to start to understand with teenagers who withdraw naturally, and sometimes they want to stay in their room on their phone and in their bed and not move. And sometimes they're okay. That doesn't mean they're depressed. They're being teenagers. So the big lessons for me, which I'm hoping serve me over the next still 5 years while we have teenagers and at home, is being able to discern as a parent what's kind of normal and what's symptomatic behavior around depression and anxiety and real struggle as a teenager right now. And I'll tell you that the kiddos that were affected the most were our youngest 2, who don't drive, can't have jobs. They were the ones that felt the most disconnected from life and their friends and all the things. And I know this is relevant probably to Robyn, well, to both of you, given middle school.
I have so many questions.
Yeah. And so just starting to learn, and it ended up degrading just in full autonomy or full authenticity, and just telling you, my daughter ended up getting hospitalized. That's where we ended up because she just was at the bottom of a pit that we couldn't help her get out of. And what is that translated into is I have a team, my whole team is women and moms at work. We have, 12 of us. And so what started for me was translating this to them. And now what we're doing at Universal Technical is we're doubling down on mental health for really the next year, because we not only have a responsibility to our employees and their families and who is in their home, but our students are in that population at Universal Technical. So I think for me, lessons learned around the stigma of mental health, around all of those things was probably the biggest impact that will be a long-term impact for how I practice, how I mom, all the things. That was probably the biggest thing for me.
What did you see?
Yeah.
What did you say? Like, I need to look closer, because my oldest is like what you're describing as your youngest.
Yep.
And I'm like, you're going to snap. She's only 12, but I'm like, you don't give yourself any grace, and you're only in 7th grade. Like, it's crazy. So I would love to know what you saw.
So I'll tell you, when Jocelyn got admitted to the hospital, one of the first things I asked is, how can I tell when she's being a teenager and when she's in a really bad place? Because that was my first question. Like, I didn't think she was in that place because, she's hard to read. Let's just be honest. And wicked smart. So that's always hard with kiddos that are like wicked smart, and she thinks she can solve things for herself. Mm-hmm. And one exercise we went through is talking about what does it look like for her on when she's having really hard days, where she's really in the throes of depression, and what does a feel-good day look like for her. And what she said was, I'm always in my room, but what I'm doing in my room is more of a tell of where I'm at, right? So if I'm not on my games with my friends, or I'm not on FaceTime, or I'm not engaging with anyone, I've like disconnected completely. That's probably the first biggest tell for her. If she's disengaged from everyone, even including her friend group, that's a sign of where she is. The other is really not practicing self-care, which is hard, because I'll tell you, I know if you have 12-year-old, we have a 13-year-old who the self-care is very loosely determined because they don't want to shower ever, which blows my mind. So, but like whatever's age appropriate. So at 15, typically she, want to take a shower, and, so I think being very mindful as a parent of what's normal for them when they're in an okay place for self-care even, and when they're slipping down, when they just aren't lifing, they're just not eating, not like everything is kind of off the rails. And I think what's appropriate about this conversation is I'm here, like we're remote. So the other thing for me is, why didn't I see this? I'm literally right here. And the answer is, this is what I do all day. So I didn't see it really. It was right in front of me and I didn't see it. So you have to work through the shame and the guilt and the pain as a mom sitting in the hospital admitting your daughter that I didn't see that this was this bad.
Thanks for sharing.
Stacie, it's interesting. I had some of those same calls from our employees, right? People going through, and my oldest has autism, high functioning, wicked smart, to your point. That really resonated with me because he has alternative behavior just because of his condition, which is likes to be alone, isolated, strong arming for showers, and eating anything outside of the 4 food groups that he believes are pizza, chicken nuggets, french fries, mac and cheese. And so
my just to share with you, Robyn, my oldest son, who's graduating today, is also on the spectrum. So I know exactly. And I think that's the point, right? I was organized around him, right? I was hyper organized around Evan. And so she was sort of flying below the radar a little bit for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, very similar. So I've been an advocate and a mom in a space of you need to be organized, how you approach the therapies that are available for that, all prepare you for the things that you need to notice for a kiddo that comes with a loose owner's manual, right? Still challenging, but you've got help and guidance. And what I realized very quickly, similar to both of you ladies, our whole world was turned upside down 2 weeks before COVID. Our house completely flooded on the first floor. We came home and we saw all of our belongings floating through the bottom floor of our home. During spring training, when we could not find a hotel to live in, we couldn't get a comfortable place to stay with an autistic child who doesn't like change. Talk about that was, to your point, Tiffany, my life just I felt like I was drowning in that flood. And then COVID happened and they weren't going to school. We were living in temporary housing. It took 12 weeks longer than anything we could have imagined to get our house put back in place. And my 9-year-old was struggling, and I was so focused on his therapy and regulating him that my 7-year-old, who's the happiest go lucky, hugs, kisses, writes me love notes every morning before I leave and tells me how beautiful of a mom I am, started to sit in a dark room with an iPad. And again, I was so focused on this other part. And at work at the same time, when the pandemic hit, we had to furlough 1,800 people. And I was calling employees to tell them that we were significantly impacting their lives. And because we wanted to do it in the most respectful and kind way, we made every call personally and really connected. And my poor 7-year-old during all of that, looked up at me one day and said, Mommy, I think I need to go to therapy with Parker. And there's, I tear up saying it, there's nothing, worse for that. You talked about the guilt and the shame where you're standing there thinking you have this wonderful child who's so amazing. And you just didn't pick up on the fact that he was struggling too. And I had to sort of really course correct my life in how do I make sure, and then how do I get him sibling therapy? Not only was he learning how to function with an autistic brother, which is challenging, he was learning how to do that in this totally disrupted space for us. And we did a little celebration dance. We moved back into our house, which took us, by the way, till mid-July to get back home. And, their world was just turned upside down. So it was a pretty interesting moment of reflection for me around being a mom and trying to spin 50 plates. And, how do you notice when one of them is just about to crack?
I worry about that in being a mom of what some days feels like, I don't want to say too many kids, but it's like a little bit of a gopher game.
Yep.
And my nanny, God bless her, she pulled me aside actually 6 weeks ago. And she's like, our third one is 5. And she kind of hangs with the big girls. So they're 12, 10, 5, and a baby. And so the 5-year-old kind of just needs to roll because the baby is what occupies my time. And my nanny pulled me aside and she said, Ivy was looking for some of her things the other day. And she said, oh, I'm going to look in the trash. My mom throws my things away a lot. And, which I do. And my nanny was like, I think you need to make space for her to be 5. And because I see it as senseless clutter. And she sees it as her paper that has an M on it that she worked on all day at preschool. And I was kind of caught off guard, but I was so grateful to my nanny because it's true. I can be very dismissive of her. The big ones are working on real problems in my head. The baby can't fend for herself. And it was just a real gut check for me of okay,
That's funny.
Need that.
That's funny, Tiffany, because I'll come out, and so this probably will happen as your kids. Some days, one will have an issue. I don't know, car won't start, whatever. And we have a joke. I'm like, nope, today's Evan's day. Sorry, he claimed it. Y'all, nobody else gets to be dramatic today. Somebody already claimed the day today. Like Dayton, our 21-year-old, broke his foot last Friday. We were like, okay, it's Dayton's day today. Nobody else. Because like you said, it's like, who's going to be dramatic today? And I remember during, like you said, Robyn, during the early stages of COVID, I remember being on a call or something, and like my son walked in and like laid down on the floor, was not having a good day. And I was like, I was with the client. I said, I think, can I put you on hold real quick? And he like just laid down right next to me. Like, you know, teenagers are a little, I have a note on my door right now. Please do not come in, because it doesn't matter if I'm on a call. You know, they're so myopic about, it's my world, you're just living in it, I'm just coming on it. So yeah, I think that's really hard with the higher number of kids.
Yeah.
Like, please take turns, right? Like, please don't hit me all in one day.
And that's a fascinating
Tiffany, you mentioned,
because, yeah, go ahead, Robyn.
I was going to say, Tiffany, you mentioned your nanny. So we broke down. We also knew that we needed help. I think as a mom, that's always hard to do. You're like, okay, I'm like hitting the mat and tapping out. WWE belt is not worth it. I need help. And she really saved us through that time. But she's with our kids and is very insightful. And you know, interestingly enough, she sewed 700 masks for us at the start of the pandemic to send, because we're retail, so we had people on the front lines and staying open, and you know, you couldn't get PPE to save your life. And so my nanny was at home taking care of our kids, sewing masks for us and like shuttling them back and forth. And it was just an interesting time where you let other people in your life. And I think, Stacie, you said, like, you know, somebody claimed that day. And there was a moment in time when I was like, you know what, I'm claiming this day. This is my day to be dramatic. And I'm going to tell all of you, just like, go to your room and hide for like 15 minutes while I regroup, because my poor nanny was working, not just with the kids, but with masks. I was at work going a little nuts with everything going on. And the kids were just, their hair was on fire, you know, every day with needing to be entertained. And there was just a moment where you just needed to turn the lights off and sit in a dark room and collect yourself.
It's fascinating conversation, because you cannot stop being a mom while you're working, when you're at work, right? And you cannot stop being like who you are, a leader, when you're even at home, because you still have stuff to care about and to, you know, to think about work as well. So, and over the past few months or the past year, like, have you been more empathetic, or have you been more aware of, you know, how your people can really juggle different responsibilities as well? Was it a wake-up call? Was it just a reinforcement of what you know, were seeing and what you were thinking before? What was the experience there?
I'll say, because I actually learned this, Stefan, when I was on with Mita Malik, which I think was part of the Life Guide series. And Mita is so unapologetic. I don't know if you guys follow Mita, but like, I'm a mom. And she said she had this moment of one time the baby was crying and she was on a call, and like, she went into the bathroom, into the tub, and like shut the shower curtain. Like that was going to do anything for the fact that the baby was crying. Like she just, and so she, I think, gave me permission to be unapologetic, that sometimes, like in that moment, to say, you know what, can you hold on just a second? And I've shared this with my team as moms, like, you know, so I think my perspective has shifted dramatically. You know, we're all in a situation where we can't always create exceptional boundaries, but I'm actually not going to apologize for it, because this is where we are. And if, as a company, we're going to continue to foster remote work, which we are, and flex and all the things that we've decided to do, then we can't create a situation where we make moms apologize for lifing happening right next to them. And so I give Mita a lot of credit that day for opening my eyes, because I think as a Gen Xer, we were always told, I was told to not put my baby's picture on my desk when I had a new baby, when I had Evan in 2006, I was told by my leader, who was an HR leader, that would be bad for my career. Mm-hmm. So we've just come such a long way. We're not where I'd love for us to be, but I think people like Mita pushing that envelope and giving women the permission to not apologize. If you're Tiffany, I don't know if you were like nursing, like all the things I think of that I had shame about because I had my kiddos in 2006 and 2003, we covered all that up. And now I want to provide permission to women to not, be afraid of being in that space.
Yeah, I think, so I'm a small business owner, and it's hard to be a working mom, and it's particularly hard, at least in my experience, of being a working mom of really like infants and really, really small children, because you can't reason with them in the same way. So I found the pandemic I had to create more crisp expectations for everybody. My kids, and helping them understand like, hey, what I do creates this opportunity and these things in our lives. So I need you guys to step into this space so that I have this space remaining for what needs to happen. Like, they kind of had to meet me as partners in this. And my 12 and 10-year-olds had to pick up tasks and do things that in our non-COVID life, I paid people to come in and do. And while I wanted to sort of superhero it was very clear to me that was not sustainable. So they had to step in and be partners with my husband and I, and kind of understand, like, this is the economic engine. This is how it works. This is how we pay for things. This is how we get big things in our lives. And that doesn't come without cost. And this is the line that we won't cross because our relationship with you guys is important, but we have to be honest. These are opportunity costs of our time and resources. So, and then the same thing in work. I had to create some really crisp expectations of, one of my kids needed help. I ended up actually getting a tutor for her because I realized I needed those hours at work because we were in a crisis. And so I had to get the resources set up differently to make it happen. I'm going to maybe be a little unpopular. I think sometimes when we talk about making it really more comfortable for women to work, that it gets interpreted as easy. And it's like, it's really hard. If you want to make a lot of money and have a big job and have babies, it's going to be hard. We need to make it comfortable where people say like, hey, I need to go breastfeed. No probs. Go take 20 minutes. Go watch a Netflix show. Make it go as fast as you can because it's terrible. And we'll see when you come out. But it's not, you're going to have to breastfeed it. Like, you're going to have to pump. It's going to suck. Or you're going to need to bring your kid with you. And I think sometimes we get a little bit too optimistic. And maybe this is, again, just because I'm a small business owner, about what the goal looks like for this. It's like, it's going to be hard. We need to make it more culturally comfortable. We need to make it so that women have the space that they need. And it's kind of hard. So I don't know how you guys.
I think you hit it. I think you hit it. I think the other thing that, as women, I might be unpopular as well. I don't think that we do well is be really vulnerable, right? It's hard and we're struggling, and that is okay. You do not have to be the superhero. You don't have to do it the best. And so I made a decision during the pandemic where I sent emails out to our entire organization about the journey I was on as a mom, as a leader, and was completely vulnerable. I shared the struggles I was facing. I asked for tips and tricks from our 5,000 employees to help me. And I demonstrated that as a leader in our organization with 2 school-age kids, where school, talk about crisis, right? We were in a crisis at work, but we had an army of people to help. And these teachers didn't have that, and the school system wasn't ready. And our kids were the ones who were going to suffer. And with a special needs kid, I just opened the door to me, who I was and how I was struggling. And we put together toolkits. We hosted office hours, and there was a moment there where I was telling the organization, just, full open, I'm human, and I'm going to need your help, and I'm here to help you if you need it. But we've got to tell each other because this is hard. And pandemic or no pandemic, right? Forget the pandemic for just a minute. You just said 3 things that whether it's a pandemic or it's not, right? We have kids, they scream. They don't necessarily listen. You can put all the expectations around in the world. They're going to open that door, Stacie, at some point. And we have working moms at all ages in life too, right? Like I had to help our team understand that I'm not 25. I was a much later in life mom. And so my energy level is, they sucks my will to live some days. And like I had to just say it. And when I said it, it became much more real for other people to say it, because I think we took down the shame barrier of it's not easy and it's okay to say it's hard, and don't do it alone because we're all here for each other. And we asked our male coworkers to be allies for that too, right? Because we have some single dads who are going through the same struggles. They're Mr. Moms, and we didn't want to forget that they were on this journey too, and we all had to be there to help each other, because at the center of all of it was the employee experience had to, stay intact, and our home life and our kiddos had to stay intact, and we had to work on our marriage too. Like, let's not forget that being a mom also sometimes, my husband says all the time, like, was just sort of hoping today I'd get one rung up on that ladder in your priority list. And I was like, listen, today's not your day. Tomorrow's not looking good either. I'll catch you on Saturday. And so you have to, we balance other things. And I think we think we're superheroes sometimes, and it's okay to take off your cape and just, be a little vulnerable.
It's a good point, actually, because I didn't really think of it, but being a leader, being a mom, being a wife, that's a lot of different priorities to balance and to drive.
Yeah, a partner, a wife, whatever it is, we need all that help we can get.
I don't know if it for you guys, but I found myself being much more intentional about being explicit with my young women, even that don't have kids yet, because I find my reactions and choice of words is really important. So if somebody said like, oh, you're the hero, you've got so many kids, and I started saying, it's the crazy I choose. It's my choice. Those choices are my blessings. And I think that it's important that we don't walk around tired and exhausted and like martyrs of our own decisions, because we chose these things. This is so awesome that we have all these opportunities and people in our lives that want to love us well. How do I show up with energy and enthusiasm for that? I want the young women to see it can look like that. You have to make decisions so that it becomes sustainable, and you have to put things in place with resources and family or nannies or tutors or drivers or whatever it looks like. And I want them to know I have those things. I've worked for those things. I don't do other things because I pay for those things, so that I can have the choice to be here. And they need to understand that decision making. And I think we can kind of gloss over the how too fast, instead of being like, no, I don't drive my kids to practice. I can't. I would miss literally a third of my week if I did that. And now other people do that, but I would never be able to have my job if that's what I did with this many kids. So I think they have to understand those decisions. And I think because this generation of working moms are involved in a different way than at least the women that I saw, like the pantsuit wearing crazy person at the corporate job when I was in my 20s, and I was looking at those women, they weren't as maternal, at least in the way that they presented themselves. And I think the way that we still fulfill that role in our families and still have careers, the toolbox to me has been something I've had to really discover.
So I have a two-part question, just to bounce back on what you ladies were saying. So have you lowered expectations about yourself and about your teammates? So that's the first part of the question. And with, again, everything that has happened over the past year or so, do you think that people's expectations have increased in terms of what employers should provide to them to be who they are, meaning moms, dads, humans?
I would say I don't think I lowered the expectations. I think I changed them. And I think, Tiffany, you said that, and so did you, Stacie, that I think the expectation setting just looks different for myself and what I could accomplish and how I had to lean on others. But I also think in HR, and Stacie, I'd love to hear your perspective, that I think there is more expected from us now around being an employer of choice in a different way. So what does virtual connectivity look like? What's readiness for work from home? What's the technology you're going to give? How do you think about the benefits differently? And I think there's a lot of pressure on the the people aspect of the business right now, where before I think we were a partner, and I think now we're definitely considered an enabler. And the pressure at work, I think for me at least, has started to feel much harder and faster. And the war on labor, just as many folks know, there are people struggling. And so there's not a tsunami of people anymore wanting to get into the workforce or do jobs that might require them to come to the office. And we've had to be really strategic about who we are and how we position ourselves. So while I haven't lowered my expectations of myself, I think I've had to reposition them, and where I spend my time now just looks very different because of the expectations externally and internally to be a really strategic people leader and innovative in this space right now.
So do you think that employees' expectations have increased in terms of what they're expecting from their employers?
I think so. I do a talk time every month with employees and an anniversary roundtable, and the conversation has dramatically shifted from things like, are we going to give away prizes at the Christmas party to I need a work from home stipend, my chair isn't good, my computer isn't fast enough, I need different monitors, I don't see my leader as much, I need to have faster internet. And those are all things you didn't think about because you showed up every day and your desk did the job for you. And now I find myself what's the highest amount of internet somebody could have to use all of our applications to still be productive? And I'm I don't know. Cox cable, help me out here. What does that look like? So I do think there's much more pressure on us to think creatively and be fiscally responsible in this space too. So how do you balance all of that?
I think it's an interesting question around, and Robyn mentioned this around well-being. I've been a huge advocate of well-being because I was a fitness instructor for so many years. Still am, I guess, technically. And so I've been such an advocate for well-being and building well-being programs since 1999. And then this is the year where I was okay, I don't think that's what people don't need to know to eat an apple and drink water and go for a walk like that. We're in a different space. And so I think a big thing that we're trying to navigate through is what does that look like if, as you have a distributed workforce, we have some people that are on campus, some people that are working remotely. We have this mixed population distributed across the whole country, and we're acquiring companies. So that's, interesting. How do we do an integration with somebody who's a different culture at the same time? And we just announced 2 new campuses in Austin and Miami. So all of those things together, how do we meet people where they are? I don't have a good answer for that. I'm trying to figure it out still. But one thing that we, to answer your question, we've always had a wellness incentive. So I think kind of this perspective of, there's probably no sacred cows here. We're going to have to look at the whole thing. What do we need to do? Because I'm a huge advocate of, given our claims right now, I'm concerned that people aren't actually getting access to care for mental health. I'm concerned about that. And that's a real, tangible, and dramatic issue that we need to address. We have a large percentage of vets in our population. We actually have a vets program. So we have a lot of vets. We have a lot of people that are in the age group where they have kids and teenagers that are probably struggling. So, we sat around a table and brainstormed what are the things that we can look at to help facilitate and foster greater support. And one of the questions I've been asking is how do we can extend that support to our student population? So how do we look not just at our employees, but can we extend our EAP or other things to our students? Because let's be honest, they're probably not insured and not consuming benefits from anyone. So what do we do? On the expectation piece, something I was very lucky because I took this role at the end of October. And so we were kind of, still navigating through, but we knew a little bit more, right, than we did in July. And the first thing I did was create very specific goals and metrics, because my thought was this, I know that I'm really fast at things. I can knock a ton of work out in 3 hours, ridiculous. But that's not everybody. After leading people, I had that expectation. You said, Tiffany, early on, as a young leader, you're everybody can get it all, like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you get this all done? And, you come to realize that's not the case. Everybody works at their own pace. So I think it was really important. I thought it was really important to come in and create specific metrics and goals and expectations, because, that's what I care about you getting across the line, not, how many hours you're logged in, or I can see that you're in Teams or whatever. Like, I don't care. We need to create tangible results that we can drive towards as a team and help one another when people are struggling. And so that was my kind of approach from a leader standpoint, is kind of taking off the table the whole, the blend of work and life. I don't care, outside of ensuring you're on meetings. But some of my recruiters, one of my recruiters said, I have to take my daughter, to a different program because her school's closed. I mean, she's in recruiting. I don't care if you're doing phone interviews till 6 or 7 o'clock at night, which sometimes you have to do to get to the talent, whatever, like, do what you need to do. So I think for me, it's just having very clear expectations and goals and metrics has helped us navigate as a team through all of that uncertainty and shifts. And sometimes shifts, like, the school stuff you talked about, Robyn, like, are we on? Are we off? We had Queen Creek District and Chandler District. They were on totally different schedules. These were back. These were back. Who's going remote? It was like bananas. And so I think that ended up being, and still is, it's still driving towards specific goals and metrics. It is saving our bacon a little bit and still moving forward and making progress, but nobody feeling scrutinized on what time of day they need to show up or whatever. I think it's interesting as we think about distributed teams and time zones and all the things. Those are the things that come to mind for me on the kind of the future of work, and how do we remain more competitive for talent. Again, to your point, Robyn, we have to be incredibly competitive for talent. Those are the things that are going to make us more competitive for talent, is telling people, it's about the work that gets done, not the time that it takes you to do the work. And so that's something that I think will create a competitive advantage for us. And then we're also looking at, how do we leverage the fact that we really figured out how to teach trades virtually? Crazy. We thought that was going to happen. And so now we're going to probably migrate and continue forward with a partial virtual model, which is more scalable, more accessible, and so I think applying these lessons to not just reverting back, right? What are the things that we learned that actually creates a competitive advantage for teams, for leaders, for our business, for our revenue? So that's where we're right now, kind of trying to figure that out.
What about you, Tiffany?
I think that, I guess my first reaction to your question about, are my expectations less? I would say decidedly no. I agree with what Stacie's saying, that we have to be more outcomes based in the way that we lead. I think the best talent wants to be led that way. My message to my team when we were in the middle of COVID was like, if you look at championship teams, they always walk onto the field bruised, and they're usually walking into the toughest game of the season. And that was what last year was for us. It was like, it's a chance for us all to really understand, like, actually how much gas we have in the tank. And I think as leaders, it can be really challenging to know when to step in and like wrap a warm blanket around your team, and when to be like, no, we're charging harder into this battle. And I know you're tired, but this is where we really learn what we're made of. And it does take toughness in business. I feel like I'm like so ruthless, but it's like, this is not the time to rest, you guys. I know you're tired. So am I. Like, we have to be alert. There will be a time where we can kind of retreat and, kind of like bandage ourselves up. But last year, man, like we ran hard, and I'm like, we get to pick our hard. This is the hard we're choosing, because if we don't charge, we're going to have to deal with some type of market impact that will create hard for us in a different place. And so it was kind of that like power of control, like we're going to keep charging. I think I think about it from a business perspective. I think there are definitely some really important whole health trends that are playing out in the workplace, that we as employers are taking more responsibility in people's whole life than we did 15, 20 years ago when I got into business. There is still a finite amount of financial resources that can be dedicated to that. It's not infinite. And so I think as cultures and as leaders, you have to pick what are the things that we're going to go whole hog on and what are the things that you sort of coach and direct, but we can't take responsibility entirely for all of people's beings. We are not their caretakers. They're grown-ups and they need to own those decisions, and we need to help facilitate good decision making. But at the end of the day, like, you're a grown-up and you need to be responsible for yourself. And so I do feel like there's resources that we need to put to be good partners with people to help them get to different levels of awareness and connectivity and resources that maybe they don't know how to assimilate themselves. That's what I feel like our job as employers are, that they have to step into it. And I can't put so much financial burden on my company to fill all those gaps for the humans that the company is not viable. And I think that is a great tension right now playing out in business.
I think, Tiffany, the other thing that's interesting in this space is, I agree, our job is to educate, their job is to utilize, right? So we bring it to the table. To your point, they've got to choose what they want and take it. We've almost approached it almost as a buffet of options that will educate you around, and everyone's total well-being is different. We rebranded our whole program under Wellbeing 365. So don't just do it while you're at work. You need to do it all the time, and these are the resources we have. I do think one of the things that was interesting that I think has come out of the pandemic is that we're even having this conversation and talking about resources and best practices across companies. Prior to the pandemic, I think I would have shared a little bit and sort of tried to keep a competitive edge and, had my umbrella of things I was going to do that was going to maybe take folks from Stacie. And now I'm like, listen, this is what we're doing. What are you doing? Like, we just need to get talent back to work and the economy thriving and prepare ourselves to care for our employees in a different way and educate them. And if something I'm doing is going to work for you and it just moves all of us forward, like, this is the time more than ever to come together and talk about just being good stewards of the economy and the future of the generations we're raising, right? So just imagine what it's going to look like for them and what this 14 to 18 months has probably done to the next 12 years of their life. And, I think for me, this has been a pretty interesting piece. And you talked about choices. We've told our employees, you do have choices, like everybody does. The market is crazy right now. We hope you choose us. We want you to be on the journey with us. But like, if we're not the best match for you because of where you are in your life and your choices and your well-being, like, we want to enable you to be the best you. And that might not be here. I hope it is. But I've made calls to other HR partners and said, hey, I've got this person who's moving somewhere that we don't operate, and we want to help facilitate that for them. Because I think we have a bigger responsibility just as organizations who have a lot of influence to, think about how we keep the economy thriving and we keep our employees wanting to be at work and be their best selves, because I think they're challenged out in places they just aren't vulnerable enough yet to talk about even. So I don't even think we know some of the benefits and aspects that we need to educate on quite yet either. I think we're 2 to 3 years away from understanding that true impact.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we could go on and on and on, but we're getting close to the hour. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your wisdom and your insights on the show today. I really appreciate it, and I wish you the best to all of you. Thanks again. I know that you have a very hard job to do, like being all at once. Just amazing. So
I will. I'll share a funny. Like, I just keep looking down because my son can't find his tassel for literally as I'm on momming, and I'm like, really, like, how? 2021. Here we are.
Today's graduation.
Today. Yes, it's been graduation 4 hours. I'm like, hey, I don't know how to manifest a tassel for you, son. I don't know what to say. So.
Amazon 1 hour, whatever it is. Amazon now. Yeah. Thanks. Great to meet you, ladies.
It's an awesome way to end the show. So thank you again, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations on the graduation, by the way.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you guys.
Too.
Nice to meet you.
5, 6, 7, 8.